Hey, I'm Shelly,
And I'm Angela,
and this is Real Talk Dating Exposed.
where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of dating in your 40s.
If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like us below.
And if you're listening to us on audio, please subscribe as well.
Now let's get into it.
Okay, question that I feel like we get all the time. So we're just going to address all the layers that go into this, which is, why are you still single?
Why are you still single in your
In your 40s.
I mean, is it
also being in your 40s, but like why are we still single? Because it's a choice.
it's a choice. 100% a choice. I mean, if
Yeah.
we wouldn't not be, this is just where it's funny because it's like if
Yeah.
we met the right person, we
We wouldn't be single.
We wouldn't
Yeah.
be single.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a conversation you and I have so often. So I think let's start big picture, right? Like when you go through, so for anyone wondering, because I laugh, people are making assumptions about never being married. Like we've both been married.
Yep.
I don't have kids. Angela has kids, but when you've gone through relational things, like we've been in serious relationships and have gone through things that ultimately have not worked out the way that we potentially anticipated, you know,
Right.
you can't help that you end up single and what age you are when that fucking happens. It's like when people ask me like, oh, you never wanted kids. How do you know that?
Right.
Like, no, I
Right.
didn't plan on being single in 40, and like that's just so presumptuous, right? So I
Yes.
feel like people asking us too why we're single in our 40s, it's almost like, am I supposed to like, is that an attack? Like
Right.
how are you coming at me?
Right.
Almost
Right.
judgy, right? It feels judgy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to speak on our behalf first because I feel like it resonates with a lot of women and that we know that are strong, independent women. And I think you reach a point where you can have all your ducks in a row in life, right? Like you're fine alone and you stand on your own 2 feet and you don't need a man and all of these things. But ultimately what it comes down to is like, have you done the work inside?
Yes.
To like heal any of the things you've gone through relationally, childhood, just any of those things. And I think when you get to an age where you realize like, hey, self-awareness can get me so much further in life in so many ways and also surround me with the right people and remove the wrong people.
Yeah.
And you really lean into that. So you and I have done a lot of self-work, right?
Yeah.
Like what does self-work look like to you before I carry on?
Gosh, I think I just started with the traditional therapy, right? Therapist, and also getting to a point in my life where it's like, okay, I keep finding myself in these cycles. And you've said this before, and I am 100% in this situation or was in this situation where unemotional available men were
Emotionally
attractive.
unavailable men, yeah.
Were attractive to me. That was my typical MO. And so then it was like, okay, going back to childhood trauma, going back to my childhood and thinking like, okay, what caused that? What in my life created that to be a normal thing?
And your narrative.
And my narrative around that. So therapy. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, now that I'm aware, and therapy's great. Therapy's amazing. I think that at some point you get to a point where you're like, okay, I've hashed out my past so much. What else can I do to like look forward and move forward? Right. So therapy, breath work, meditation, working out, Reiki. I have a mental coach that helps me not only like personal and business, friends, relationships, cutting people out, spending time alone.
So that was my next point. Yeah, is that we can do all this work, right? And all those things are amazing and they've helped you substantially. I think where a lot of women fall short and men, and I don't know which one's worse to be honest with you, which is after that breakup, after that tough separation, right? When you're used to having a partner.
Yeah.
How much time do you spend alone? And I'll tell you what, after my divorce, I remember telling myself, I'm going to sit here in this house by myself on the weekends until the awkwardness doesn't feel awkward anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And it took a fucking long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And some alcohol and some other thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
where you're just like, oh my God, it's uneasy being in this space by myself. And then
Right.
you reach a point where you get past that. So all the therapy is great and all that stuff is great. But I think how people can handle themselves alone speaks volumes to who they will allow in their life
100%.
moving forward.
Well, and also, are you comfortable being alone with your thoughts? Like that can
So
be
many things.
That can be that silence of being alone and in solitude can be the loudest noise you've ever sat with, because we do all of these other things to distract us, right? We get the corporate job, we move up, we have kids, we get married, we buy the house, we get the job, we take the vacations, we get the cars. Like we do all of these things to distract us. And so when you start peeling back the layers of your life, which when you go through a divorce, that's what you fucking do.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
It's lonely. It's scary. It's sad. Like you have all of these feelings. And then you have this moment of being like, what do I want my life to look like? Once you get through that part of accepting what your new life is, and to your point of being like, holy shit, this is my life and this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Totally.
Then you get to peel back the layers and be like, okay, who am I really?
What do I want?
What do I
am
want?
I okay alone?
Yes.
Right. And I think
And most people are not.
No. And
that's
think,
okay. But I think the sooner you acknowledge that, and the quicker you force yourself to be in solitude, I think solitude and alone are two different things, but then you can start feeling the feelings that you need to fucking feel and thinking the thoughts that you need to think
to get to a place where you will make better decisions moving forward in your relationships. But more importantly, I just think there's a level of like self-love that comes with sitting in that uncomfortable place that so for instance, you and I talk about this, like I would rather, like I love being alone.
Yes.
Like, I
crave
love
it.
I crave it. And after a day of this, where it's clients, podcast, things later, I go home and I'm like, I just want to be by myself, like, and like turn off the world. And I think when you can I think it's a healthy place to be, right? It's not an excuse. It's not isolation. I love people and I also love myself. It's like a healthy balance. I think when you get to that level of like, of being able to be alone and recognize that your own company is fucking pretty amazing.
Yes.
You will start benchmarking who you let into your space against your own solitude.
Yeah.
And I know that's hard for some people to understand, but to me, I think about it like on a Saturday, if I'm tired and someone's like, oh, do you want me to come over and spend time? And I'm like, I have to think about like, would I rather do this by myself or like, would this person add value for me to have them here? And I think it makes you start looking at like friendships differently, relationships differently, you know? So I think the self-work that you and I have done, it gets you to a space where you're like, all right, I'm good alone, like inside and out, right? Like we would love to have someone. It's not a question of that. It's just, are they adding enough value to trump my own solitude and how I feel when I'm by myself? And that's a level of safeness, and it's all the things we talk about, right?
Right.
So I think making assumptions that we're just 40, like, why are you single? I think there's plenty of reasons we don't want to settle. Like at this point, when we've come this far, why are we going to?
Right. Why would we put ourselves in a situation where we just came out of? Right. And then also, like you said, anything that's going to disrupt this piece that I've worked so hard to create is not okay. And also, I think you also get to a point in your life where you recognize those inconsistencies in someone else. Or, I mean, I've dated people that I'm like, are you ever alone? That's a red flag for me. Totally. Like if you can't just be home alone by yourself and on just a Friday night, then like, I feel like again, it goes back to what are you trying to avoid? Yeah. And I'm not going to be that thing that fills that void for you, which so many people, I think, in the dating world are looking for the next best thing, or I'm uncomfortable with this part of my life, so like I'm gonna go find someone else so I can feel better.
Yeah, it's like Band-Aids, but you can bigger issues.
But for people like us and for those women and men who have done the work, you can sense that in a second, where it's like you're literally dating from a space of void, not from a space of who's going to add value to my life.
100% agree. And you do find those people quicker.
100%.
And you feel them out, but that's part of so again, I think when you're already in a dating pool that's small at our age, for whatever reason, and then on top of it, you want to add in, like, we want people that are self-aware, that have done the work in some capacity. And I get like done the work is like a cliche thing, and people be like, well, what does that mean? Well, I think when you've done it, you know what it means.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And you could sense it.
And it doesn't end. And it never stops. Like you could be at the point where you're like, oh, fuck. I mean, also cliche, like healing is not linear. So you could have a situation where you're like, oh, I thought I healed that. And then it presents itself in a relationship. And we also talk about this a lot, where it's like, you can do so much work alone. But the real hard work is when you start bringing someone else into your world and you start practicing those things 100%. Of compassion and understanding and being emotionally available. That's a whole other thing.
Agree.
But I think when you find yourself in that space with someone who has done the work, then you have those open, honest conversations of like, hey, I'm getting triggered right now, or like I'm feeling this type of way about this situation, and understand it has literally nothing to do with you and everything to do with something that's happened to me.
And if they have done the work, then they'll understand that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And be able to have a conversation around it, because I do think there is healing that can happen in a relationship, in a healthy relationship, where you can show each other compassion and hold space for each other, but not take it on as my problem to fix.
Agree. because we're not
because
here to
that's not,
fix.
we're not here to fix.
Agree.
It doesn't work.
And realistically, at our age, I mean, there's going to be things in any relationship, right? We can talk about what we want in a perfect world. People are going to come with shit. Even when we've done the work, we come with shit. There's times where you and I, I'm like, oh, didn't mean to bring that into this, or like I reacted badly in that way. Like we're still triggered. I think the idea of like self, like development. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Like personal development, like that's never ending, right?
Yes.
Once you start healing and doing the work on yourself, you never want to stop.
No.
You know, but I do think as you're in that space, it's harder to date someone that has zero capacity or will or drive to even give a shit about being a better human.
No, it's like we're speaking a different language.
Yeah, which kind of makes our pool go even smaller.
Smaller.
Yeah. So I think being single at our age is a choice. I think I would love to have someone. I'm not here saying like beating my chest, like I choose to be single. No, but the point is I'm going to choose to be single until it's healthy and I'm happy and I feel safe and they're adding value and I'm doing the same for them. So yeah, I just think the stigmas around that or the way people approach us with that question to me is fascinating sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's very like assumption based.
Well, yeah, they just don't know our story. And that's literally how I approach everybody. Like, I don't know your story. I mean, I know your story, but like, I don't know their story.
So we're not going to judge though.
Yeah. There's not like a judging bone in my body or in yours.
I agree.
You know, I think everybody has a story. Everybody has an opinion and there's no wrong or right. It's just a matter of whether or not it aligns.
It aligns with you.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah.
So what else do we have to touch on with that?
I think that was pretty much it.
That was our biggest.
I think the biggest thing was obviously like, what does doing the work look like, which it can look different for anybody.
Totally.
And I think it's important to have evolution around that. And there's also something I read the other day where it's like, also give yourself grace during that time, because every time you uncover something about yourself that maybe you didn't know before, there is this part where you're like, holy fuck, you see your life differently. And there's this part where you need to give yourself grace and compassion
to like reprocess
and to reprocess that information and see yourself in your life in a different way.
Yeah.
And that never changes, by the way.
No, it's a constant, right?
Yes.
It's just realizing that it's constant change, evolution, growth, sometimes 2 steps forwards, 3 steps back. Like it doesn't matter. But the point is that you're on that journey and you want to keep being better.
Right.
The only other point I want to hit on with that as well is that, and this isn't being pessimistic, but like, let's call a spade a spade. Like I have a lot of friends that are married and not happy.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's this, like, it goes back to like this stigma of like what you're supposed to do in life, like get married, have kids. And like, I have a lot of friends that are admittedly with their significant other for the children, and that will change and to me, that's a sad way to live.
Agree.
Or just being married because you don't want to be alone, or you can't afford to be alone. Or, I mean, there's so many things, and I feel for all of these humans, but like, there's 2 sides to every coin, right? And just because it looks some way on the outside doesn't mean it goes back to that, like making assumptions, like, oh, they're like the nuclear family, they must be so happy. You don't know.
You have no idea. And
you have no idea people's stories or like where they're at. And yeah, so like, I kind of feel like when people are like, why are you single? I'm like, well, then why the fuck are you married?
Yeah, why are you married? You complain about your husband all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, this is just so much. But yeah, society teaches us this is what you need to do. There's a lot of fear with change. There's also obviously in those situations where you're unhappy, there is an unhealthy attachment and cycle in that relationship. So to become aware of that and change it can be done, but it's challenging. Yeah. But I think too, if you're not in a relationship where you don't feel heard or supported or loved or encouraged, then it's not a relationship.
Agree.
And so many relationships are built off of like finances and what is this person giving me? And I mean, we've been in unhealthy relationships, so we know what that looks like. So to be out of them and then obviously have the peace that we have in ourselves, it's like, okay, you just get to redefine what a relationship's going to look like. And
not in a pessimistic way, but I mean, it's daunting. I mean, it makes the pool, like if we didn't have such expectations or standards, then maybe it would be easier, you know, but I'd rather all day stay, and we talk about this, like be alone than settle when we know what we deserve and our worth and the work we've done and what we bring to the table per se. Right.
Yeah.
So we just want that reciprocated.
Yeah. Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
This is why we're on the apps. No, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to find it on the apps.
This is how the podcast started.
This is how the podcast started. Yeah. I mean, the apps make good stories, but you know, you never know. You got to be open and you know, but I think that just kind of sums up the quote unquote,
why
why
we're
are you
single
single in your 40s?
in our
Like,
40s, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to.
there's tons out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the comments we get on TikTok are hilarious. Like, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're
because
still
you're
single
old.
in your 40s, like there's something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's fab. If you haven't scrolled through our TikTok comments, please go do so.
Yeah. Pure entertainment.
Pure entertainment. But yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, if you're not following us, TikTok, YouTube, Insta, what am I
Podcast
missing?
apps,
All the
Spotify,
podcast apps, we're
yeah,
everywhere.
all of
Yes,
them.
Spotify.
Yep.
So go give us a follow.
And support us. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.